Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, gambling enforcement goes local. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the education budget. And Speaker Mike Hubbard tells Judge Walker he wants more.
He wants more, don't you, Rocco?
Yeah, that's it. More. That's right, I want more.
Will you ever get enough? Will you, Rocco?
Well, I never have. No, I guess I won't.
More. Yeah, that's what every thug wants. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics, with your host, Bill Brett, and the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Although the V-Team is different every week.
It is different.
We have a large team.
Yeah, well,
We
we
do.
have Beth Clayton, our favorite political consultant on the left.
And literally on the
Yes,
left.
literally.
On the left. But we're happy to have you here. Hope to have you
And
more
Claire
often.
on some fact-finding mission,
I think she's in Cuba.
tracing the origin of the word egregious.
Yes, I think that may be it. I think she's in Cuba.
Could
visiting
be.
Raul.
Cuba Libre.
Yeah.
That's probably what
No
she's
doubt
doing.
there'll be plenty of Cuba Libras.
No doubt.
There'll be a shortage. Well, I tell you, some amazing things happened this past week. None so much as when Robert Bentley took to the podium to announce that he was overthrowing, 5 years worth of gambling precedent, saying that Luther Strange no longer has the authority to oversee gambling prosecutions. I mean, Jack, it was stunning.
Yes, I think he came before, had a press conference to tell people he was still governor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it clears things up or not, but remember when Luther Strange wrote the letter to all the DAs basically saying, we're out of the gambling business. If you want to enforce it locally, then that's your option. I think he got what he wished.
Yeah, well,
And, I think the Supreme Court's probably going, phew, they don't want to have to deal with it. And let's face it, y'all, we just had qualifying deadline. They want this cleared up. They don't want somebody going and getting mad and finding a challenger, or one group putting a bunch of money into the coffers of their opponents.
Yeah.
So I think it was practical and political at the same time.
Beth, doesn't this open the door for a lottery, something the Democrats have wanted for a long, long time?
I think it does, and I think that we're really running out of options. With the DMV closures, we're opening ourselves up to a federal suit. People are furious at the governor about these state parks, and I think he's kind of seen that he's backed himself into a corner with this. And so I think this is a way he can kind of get up the middle from around the edges, and he can start kind of backing down on the gambling issue and start allowing a lottery, maybe start considering Senator Marsh's bill and see what we can do to try and bring some revenue in that is not forcefully taken out of people's pockets, some elective revenue.
Well, Susan, Senator Marsh was immediately out of the gate with a statement praising Bentley's boldness.
He said he was absolutely 100% behind the governor, that this was the right thing to do at the right time, and that he would support him at whatever it took.
Well, this just, again, we already have gambling in the state. The Porch Creeks do it. Other people do it. Basically, what's happened is perhaps this opens the door for Milton McGregor to open back up. I think that's one of the big takeaways here. Everybody else is doing it that had a CA or a federal right. It's Milton basically that's been shut down.
Right, he's been singled out in this, and that's very clear no matter who looks at this.
But I don't think this attorney general did selective prosecution. I don't buy that argument. I think this is left over from Bob Riley.
He
Bob
inherited
Riley
this.
did it, not Luther Strange.
Right. He inherited this. This is from the Riley administration,
Right.
and it's still going through the Riley administration. He got this dumped in his lap,
Right.
and he had to do what he thought he was supposed to do as Attorney General.
Well, I took exception about the selective prosecution,
I
because
agree.
that's not Luther Strange. That's not what he does. One of the things we found out this week that is really another big deal is that we actually ended up with $140,000 surplus in the Education Trust Fund. Susan, how did that happen?
We brought in a 6.5 million, or 0.05 million this year, which was a 4.2% increase in revenues in the Education Trust Fund budget.
Is that billion?
It's million.
Million, okay.
Yes, and actually, this is the first time since the Rolling Reserve Act was enacted. This is the first time we've actually had the surplus to be able to go and put these funds elsewhere. Now, what the Rolling Reserve Act does is it keeps us from education from going into proration. It basically puts the money in a savings account to keep, in case proration was to come up, they can take that money out and continue for the year.
But Beth, we've got all this money going into a savings account when our schools are falling apart, right?
Right, our schools are in trouble. We're consistently at the bottom of education in the country, and until we're willing to make the changes to link education to more stable funding mechanisms, I think that we need to take that $140 million, and it would take $144 million to give pre-K education to every child in the state of Alabama. And when you look at prisons being our number 2 budget item in our general fund, and you know that they determine the prison population based on 3rd grade literacy rates, and that children who are in qualified pre-K perform 100% in 3rd grade literacy, we can end this prison problem in Alabama with funding pre-K in this state. We've got to start looking down the line. It will create jobs. It will do so many things. It keeps education dollars in education. And I think this is something the governor's come out in support of, and that we really need to look at this $140 million and see about giving every child a quality education with it.
Well, Jack, I mean, it's hard to argue with that the Republicans did a good job on the money, but are we going to get it back into education or just leave it in the trust fund?
Well, I mean, this Republican legislature has turned its back on public education. I don't think there's any question about that. The Accountability Act, rating from the classrooms. I mean, it's like they don't care about public education. And you look on the map and we're like 49th. It's embarrassing. And hopefully somebody will wake up and smell the coffee and realize we've got to do more.
Well, I tell you one thing they're trying to do, and this is something we've heard around the State House, is they're trying to flip the chairmanships of the Senate budget chairs. Mm-hmm. And what they're hoping to do is place Arthur Orr, who is now over the general fund budget, placing him in charge of the Education Trust Fund budget, putting Trip Pittman over the general fund budget. Susan, what is this all about?
Well, apparently this has been in discussion for several months now, and swapping the 2 chairs. Now, I understand they're trying to come to some sort of agreement, and there's some holdouts on it. But the speculation is that Pittman is so attached to the trust fund budget, and he doesn't want them to be able to combine the budgets in any way or have any ability to dip in there to get the general fund settled. So this way, by flipping it, it actually gives Arthur Orr the power to be able to move money between the 2 accounts.
Is that how you see it, Beth?
I think it's been a priority to try and get these education dollars that are earmarked moved over to the general fund, and I think that would be a tremendous disservice to the people of the state. If we don't prioritize education, we don't prioritize our future, and we need somebody to chair the Education Trust Fund that's going to make sure that, well, really to chair both budgets, is going to make sure that they stay separate, to make sure that our children have a shot with this, as Jack said, just egregious, since Claire's not here, I'll do it, egregious use of public money with public schools.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
First nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Beth, there seems to be a general sense of a anti-incumbent wave out there. If in the presidency, even though we don't have an incumbent running, you see people like Donald Trump, Ben Carson, even Bernie Sanders. Here in the state, I think we're sensing some of that too with this race with Becky Garrettson and the incumbent Martha Roby. You getting that sense?
I think so, and I think you cannot fairly classify Bernie Sanders as a non-insider. He's been in the Senate for, like 50 years at this point.
But he's kind of an oddball, okay? He's
I'll
not
concede
exactly
that one. I will
normal.
concede that one. I think that we're seeing it, but at the end of the day, people can say all they want that they hate the government, they hate Congress, and Congress traditionally polls, less favorable than cockroaches, but they're at, a 70% reelection rate. So at the end of the day, people will say, I didn't vote for this person, I hate this person, and they will win every single time. So I think we need to look at candidates like Becky Garrettson who can deliver. She can organize, she can raise money. I think she can give Martha Roby a run for her money. But I'm not sure about what's going to happen out in District 3 with Mike Rogers. I think Mike Rogers takes it home.
Yeah, well, I mean, and Becky Garrettson is really a nationally known figure, isn't she, Jack? I mean, the IRS came after her. She gave a stunning speech before Congress.
She was very emotional and well prepared, and and she proved that it was a witch hunt almost single-handedly.
Yeah.
Martha's formidable, though. My theory is you're elected on likability and trustworthiness. I think both ladies bring those two characteristics to the election. And I think, but there is an anti-incumbency, and I buy into that. Plus, Martha didn't look like a rock star during the Benghazi hearings.
No, that was pretty rough, wasn't it, Susan?
Yeah, if I were Becky Garrettson, I would take that tape and run with it.
Yeah.
After they had grilled Hillary till I think it was 7:15 at night, she made a levity, out of something that Hillary said, and just tried to get too serious with it. It was over the top.
Just take the joke.
Yeah, it didn't look good, did it, Beth?
Right, no, just take the joke. And that's the thing that she's going to have to combat. And honestly, women tread this fine line of being serious and professional versus looking like they're hardened and they're cold. And I think that to do that likability thing that Jack is talking about, she's going to have to soften her image and learn how to giggle at a joke every once in a while, even if it's made by Secretary Clinton.
Might need to be a little shake-up in the communications division.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of Todd
That's true.
Stacey. I think he's done more damage than good. But, Hillary Clinton could not have looked better at that moment. Martha Roby, and we all know her, could not have looked worse.
And quite frankly, she didn't look like the Martha we know.
No, she doesn't. She didn't at all. But still, that's the image that the nation has of Martha Roby.
Right.
And everybody jumped on that. Now, will that play down here? I don't know. This is a much more conservative district than Martha Roby. And it's a much more conservative district that Mike Rogers is in. And that this guy that's running against him, this Larry Desher, he's much more conservative than Mike Rogers.
Oh, yeah, he was a school superintendent, and then you go, oh, wow. You always think about but I don't, we had him on our radio show the other day, and he did a very good job. He's very relaxed. It kind of comes naturally to him. And Mike Rogers, I'm sorry, he looked less congressional than a collie the day he was in Auburn during the pep rally for Mike Hubbard. When he criticized the attorney general of his own party and said he was engaging in Chicago-style gutter politics.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Beth, that Rogers voted to grant President Obama the extension, the 2020 trillion tax, or not tax, but what do you call it?
Debt ceiling.
Debt
Raise the debt
raise
ceiling.
Mike Rogers voted with Obama on that. I bet you a lot of people in his district don't know that.
That's not going to go over well in that district. But at the end of the day, what matters is whether this man can raise the money to get that message out.
Yeah.
Because the average voter doesn't know even that we have a debt ceiling, I think. I think that we've got to have the money to get the message out. And I think that's the difference with, Congresswoman Roby, who's voted not so much along what the district I think would want her to vote. And I think Becky can raise the money to show that. Whereas I don't know if Mr. DeShera, is that his name? DeShera can raise the money.
Yeah, that's going to be the question. I mean, and the thing is Martha's voting record is about 56% conservative. Is that right, Jack?
Well, it depends. Everybody's got a different rating system. The NFIB and the chamber.
Yeah, but I mean, she's not.
But
she's
overall,
pretty much
she's more in the middle.
She's in the middle of the road. Becky's going to be to the right.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, though, I think that makes Congresswoman Roby a more effective congresswoman, because at the end of the day, you get money brought to your district by wheeling and dealing and making things happen in D.C. You don't get money brought to your district by towing a hard line, and I think that's where Ms. Garrison's going to have a hard time if she gets to D.C., because it's not always black and white. It's not always left and right.
Well, I mean, Bradley Burns done a good job.
Yes, he has.
And he still votes pretty far right.
Well, let me assure you, if she does get to D.C., money will never be a problem.
No,
that's true.
No, it will
That's
not
true.
be.
We know that.
I mean, she is a firebrand.
She is.
I want to get to this thing. Speaker Hubbard's criminal defense team is wanting the actual document that Luther Strange signed, giving Van Davis his authority to impanel a grand jury. What in the world? Why did they need the actual document, Susan?
Well, what they're looking for is not just the document. They're looking for the actual electronic file itself, which would have metadata in it, which would have dates, timestamps, and all of that. The contention originally was that somehow or another this letter had been backdated to, I think it's January 13. The AG's office contends that it was signed to the same day that it was dated. So I'm not sure where they're trying to go with this, actually.
Jack, this is more distraction, don't you think?
That's what this whole trial has been about. Every time you think you're progressing toward the October date, it gets pushed to March. When you get up closer to the March date, we got to file another motion. I mean, it's getting to be silly.
Yeah, I mean, Beth, this is just lawyerly trickery, isn't it?
It is, and I'm a lowly little 1L. I'm still taking contributions to pay for the rest of that law school education, but I know the one thing they have taught us is when you can't win on the facts, you win on procedure.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to do right here, is that they know that the facts don't support the speaker in this case. Did you accept a check from this person? Is that person a lobbyist or a principal? It's pretty cut and dry to me. So what they're trying to do is go back and argue it on the procedure. And I think that Judge Walker's not going to put up with it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Well, we're going to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis and a few bombshells from Mike Hubbard.
Stop beating that fudge, 'cause here comes the judge. Don't nobody budge, 'cause here comes the judge.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
First nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We published some clips this past week of former Governor Riley back in 2010 talking about the passage or wanting to pass ethics laws. He sounded so sincere, Susan. Who would have thought that he and Mike Hubbard, just a year or so later, go, those ethics laws, what were we thinking?
You know, and it's funny because even though he was talking about the Democrats during the actual taping, it sounded like he was talking about Mike Hubbard's current situation, word for word. Nobody's above the law. Everybody should be subject to the law. You know, we've got this opportunity now to stamp out corruption.
That didn't work out, did it, Beth?
Clearly not. And, you know, the expression is, you know, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think I came into politics the year that the Republicans took the supermajority. And so seeing this stranglehold that the speaker has had on the legislature, I mean, it's honestly part of the reason why I'm a Democrat. I mean, that's what he's done to my generation is we've looked at the Republican Party and said, if that's the party of fiscal responsibility and good values, then bye. And I think that Bob Riley's right on in the comments that he made, and I hope that they play them loud and clear in the jail cell when Mike Hubbard's there.
Well, I hope so too. I mean, Jack, you hear Riley speak, and now knowing what we know, it's kind of hard to believe he was being sincere.
It is. You know, he was talking about we're about to go into session on December 8th, and we need to clean up the culture of corruption in Montgomery, and we're going to pass the toughest ethic laws known to man. And they sure, it didn't take them but a couple of years to just totally circumvent what they hoped was cleaning up Montgomery.
Well, Bill, you remember we were so excited by that we formed a website and came down here to Montgomery to champion these new Republicans coming in and cleaning up corruption, only to find it all over again.
Yeah, well, you know, I had a friend of mine say, you know, when the Democrats were involved, you know, they'd knock over a convenience store for their buddy every once in a while. You know, it's just how you did things. Now, they robbed the whole bank.
They backed up the Brinks truck.
Well, it was just interesting to hear Riley's own words. You know, Riley's own words kind of condemn him and Mike. You know, he was actually talking about Milton McGregor when he said you can't come down here and use your money and influence and have a special kind of justice, right? Mm-hmm. That's what Mike Hubbard's trying to do with other people's money. At least Milton McGregor used his own money, right?
Exactly.
Mike uses other people's money. Susan, more Hubbard circus. You know, we got a hearing coming up tomorrow where they're wanting to depose 10 former and current members of the Attorney General's staff. I mean, how's that going to work out?
The judge has really been backed off of this a good bit. He doesn't want to see the Attorney General's office deposed. Now, let me ask you, can you and I get the Attorney General's office deposed, really?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Not that important.
But this is, they're trying to prove some sort of, prosecutorial misconduct based on one person, and that's Sonny Reagan, who Brasher took apart on cross-examination. They're trying to prove something went wrong in the AG's office. I just don't think they can find it.
I mean, Beth, here you've got a guy who's been fired from his job, called a disgrace by his boss. Nobody believes him, but yet they're trying to bring in 10 witnesses that'll make him seem credible.
Right. I think that part of what this has to do, too, is they're asking for so much, trying to get them to say no, hoping they'll get just a little bit. And I think a lot of this has to do with preserving errors for appeal. Right. And I think that's a big part of it, is they're trying to ask for all these things so they can go back and say, look how unfairly we were treated in these proceedings. And at the end of the day, they're getting the court to bend over backwards to give the speaker a fair trial. And I think that, you know, the average person, like you said, wouldn't be able to have the AG's office deposed. And it's time to treat Mike Hubbard like a citizen of the state of Alabama who's subject to his laws.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Jack, we did another little speculation this week on a who's who of the witness list. I mean, you know, they called 40 witnesses, or ended up with 37 witnesses, only heard from 6. Now, that was just the defense. Can you imagine who's going to be on these witness lists?
It's just, I mean, let's face it, y'all. I mean, where was the prosecutorial misconduct? It was what little they found, or actually it was a lot, that was all being leaked to the defense. And I say that every time we bring this up. If anybody ought to be screaming about misconduct, it's the prosecution ought to be screaming about the defense misconduct.
Oh, yeah.
And how did Mark White received information that was illegally brought to him? Did he use it? And why isn't he under the microscope?
Well, he's so slimy, they can't catch him.
He keeps sliding
I
on
say
the
it,
viewing
but-
slide.
No, but really.
Mark White is a showman. He's not much of an attorney. Susan, we did a little look at who might. Governor Bentley can be a witness.
Greg Canfield can be a witness.
And this is for the
John
prosecution.
Ross. Josh Blades has obviously given quite a bit of information to the AG's office based on what we heard in the courtroom the last time. You've got Philip Ryan. I mean, there's a long list, and legislators alike. Greg Wren is going to be a huge witness in this.
I mean, Beth, this is going to be everybody in Montgomery, basically.
It is.
I mean, it's going to be a big deal. Jack, you going to testify?
They didn't invite me.
They
for
didn't invite
something.
me. How about you?
I haven't got my
I'm
invitation.
Nor did they compel me to come.
I'm still keeping my voter registration in Lee County, hoping I'll get called for the jury pool and get past that one on.
You would be struck so fast.
I would be the first one out.
They wouldn't let you.
Goodbye.
They wouldn't let you through the door.
Yeah, they're not letting you in. They're not letting you.
How much fun would that be, though?
Yeah. Well,
Here's the interesting thing to me about you. You mentioned Greg Wren, longtime friend, known him since the 8th grade. Never in a million years would I believe that what he was accused of would ever happen. But apparently it did because he resigned and took a plea deal. He resigned and took a plea deal and was given a suspended jail sentence on one thing.
right.
Mike's looking at 22 other things. If this happened to one guy in the legislature who offered an amendment, who do you think was behind that amendment?
Oh,
I mean,
I think it's
come
very
on.
clear.
I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel for Mike.
No. The light at the end of the tunnel is the one that leads directly into
And I would rather get out of jail at 65 than I would 75.
Well, it's
Yeah,
funny.
let's be honest, Don
pushing the
Siegelman's still sitting in jail on a lot less
Yeah.
than this.
Exactly.
Don Siegelman.
Oh, yeah, and look at the guy from Dale County, Terry Spicer.
Yeah. I
He
mean,
was in it for a long time.
if he was convicted on all 23 counts, it's like 300 years.
Yes, we actually calculated it somewhere around between 300 and 400 years.
And when
That's not counting the fines.
When they convicted Roy Johnson, I heard that Matt Hart was upset that they only gave him 16 years. Think what he'll want Mike Hubbard to have.
Especially with as much trouble as Mark White has put them through.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. We had some sad news this week. We lost Judge Truman Hobbs. We also lost Representative Leslie Vance. They will be missed. Thank you for watching The V. You can catch news stories every day on alreporter.com. Like us on Facebook, watch us on YouTube, but always join us on Sundays. Have a safe week.